Welcome, dear listener, to a world where the scriptures are read by voices no one saw, and every word carries the weight of centuries. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let the quiet warmth of memory guide you into a gentle, restful journey. You step through the heavy wooden doors of the chapel and feel the slight resistance of centuries pressing against your fingertips. The faint scent of wax, dust, and old wood curling around you like a memory you cannot yet name. The air is cool and slow, settling softly against your skin, as though it has waited for you to arrive. And the faint draft that slips through the cracks carries the smell of distant rain on stone. Wet and clean, yet heavy with quiet. Your footsteps sound muted on the flagstone floor, each echo lingering for a moment longer than it should. And the echo itself seems to curl back into the corners, like a whispered greeting that has been waiting for ears to hear it. Light falls in muted streaks from the narrow, arched windows, painting faint, honeyed rectangles on the worn wooden pews, and you notice how the dust dances in each beam, suspended in a quiet ballet, turning air into something almost tangible. There is a hush here that is almost liquid, as though the chapel itself has slowed the movement of the world outside, pressing the seconds into longer shapes so you can feel them brush against your skin and hum beneath your ribs. You feel the weight of stillness in your chest, a gentle pressure that both soothes and holds, as though time itself has bent to let you witness something it rarely allows. And you inhale slowly, tasting the faint iron of old nails and the soft sweetness of melted wax. Somewhere high above, in the shadowed rafters, a single candle trembles and releases a flicker of light, and the flame leans toward you like a curious hand, casting shadows that stretch along the ceiling and floor in ways that seem almost alive. Then, without warning, though it has always been waiting, you hear it, a voice, low and tender, curling through the space like smoke rising from an unseen hearth, carrying the weight of words older than you can imagine, and yet familiar as the rhythm of your own breathing. The sound does not belong to any body you can see, nor any lips you can trace. It hovers in the air like a gentle fog, slipping over your shoulders, brushing your hair, and warming the back of your neck with a presence that feels like memory. You take a step forward, and the voice follows, rolling through the chapel in waves. And though the words are ancient, they feel like your own thoughts made audible, like the echo of a prayer you half remembered in childhood, softened by time. The air tastes faintly of honey and smoke, mingling with the dampness of stone, and you feel the slight vibration of the words in the floor beneath your feet, as though the chapel itself has learned to speak, or perhaps only to echo what the voice carries. You notice the wooden pews are smoothed from countless hands, the grain polished by devotion and absence alike. And you imagine all who once sat here, each presence now folded into the wood and air, leaving only this delicate resonance for you to find. The voice swells and recedes like a tide brushing against an unseen shore, and you realize that it does not need your attention to exist, yet your presence somehow makes it deeper, more intimate, as if you have been summoned to witness a secret older than memory. A faint draft brushes your cheek, bringing with it the scent of wet leaves and the far-off murmurs of a village beyond the hills. And you feel that the chapel is neither isolated nor empty, but suspended in a liminal place where the seen and unseen meet quietly. You run your fingers along the edge of a pew, the wood warm from years of touch, and the voice continues, flowing over you like water, soft and patient, carrying the stories of faith and longing in a language older than your own, yet strangely familiar. The candle flickers again, casting light that trembles across the stone floor, and you feel the shadow of it in your chest, a tender weight that moves with the cadence of the voice, marking time not by hours, but by quiet revelation and soft recognition. Somewhere behind you, a window creaks in the breeze, and the sound melds with the reading, the motion of the air seeming to carry the voice outward and inward, wrapping around your ribcage and settling like a gentle hand upon your heart. The words are patient, each one drawn slowly from the depths of memory, and though you cannot see who speaks them, you feel their presence in the warmth that rises from the stone, in the faint vibration of air, and in the pulse of light that lingers after the flame flickers. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the voice wrap around your ears and lungs, filling the space inside you with a rhythm that feels like breath, like the quiet pulse of the earth beneath the chapel. And you realize that listening is a kind of communion older than spoken prayer. Your shoulders loosen, your jaw softens, and you notice the texture of the air as it brushes over your skin, carrying with it whispers of wax, of wood, of pages turned long ago, all blending into the voice, all part of the same gentle story that asks only to be heard. The light shifts as the sun moves behind distant clouds, and the chapel seems to hold its breath with you, the silence between the words swelling with meaning, as though the spaces themselves are deliberate, sacred, full of memory and possibility. You imagine footsteps that once walked this floor, now absent, yet their presence clings to the corners, and the voice reads on, as if to bridge the gap, to bring the invisible into the room with you, filling the air with something both intangible and strangely corporeal. The candle flame dances once more, and the shadows it casts stretch and fold in on themselves, creating shapes that feel like echoes of people, of devotion, of hands lifted in quiet prayer. And the voice folds over these shadows, smoothing them into gentle shapes of sound. The words come slower now, and you notice the warmth in your fingertips as you rest them lightly against the cold wood of the pew, the cool stone beneath your feet, the faint hum of the unseen as it winds around you, carrying a memory of all that has been and all that is still waiting. You inhale deeply, tasting the soft smoke, the faint sweetness of beeswax, the lingering trace of rain on the stones, and you feel a quiet tremor, a gentle pulse that reminds you that you are here, and that even in this silence, the world moves softly around you. The voice lingers in the air like a soft sigh, and you feel its weight in your chest, in the hollow of your ears, in the spaces between your thoughts, until it seems to become a part of you, and you a part of it, as though the chapel and the unseen reader have always known you. You let your eyes wander to the far corner, where dust motes drift in a beam of light, and for a moment, you imagine them carrying the words upward, scattering them slowly across the chapel, until every shadow, every beam, every stone holds a fragment of this quiet, unfolding story. Time stretches, dissolving into the cadence of the reading, and you feel the heartbeat of the chapel, the pulse of air, the warmth of memory brushing against your skin, as though the voice has been speaking to you long before you knew how to listen. And in that gentle unfolding, you realize that you will carry this moment with you forever. The memory of a voice that read in the unseen, of light and shadow and wax and stone, and of the way silence itself can speak when it is heard with a quiet, open heart. The candle flickers one last time as you stand, your breath slow, your senses full of soft textures and smells, and the voice drifts with you, retreating into the corners, into the rafters, into the air, leaving behind only the warm, echoing trace of something sacred and unseen. And you feel that you have arrived somewhere both familiar and entirely new. You enter the chapel again, this time drawn by the faint scent of melting wax and the warmth it leaves in the air. And notice how the candles line the walls like silent sentinels, each flame leaning gently toward the next. The glow they cast is soft and tremulous, spilling like liquid honey across the worn stone floor. And you feel the warmth brush against your cheeks, gentle as a remembered touch, as though the air itself has softened in deference to these tiny guardians. You move closer to a single candle, noticing how its wick curls slightly at the top, blackened from patience, and you breathe in the subtle perfume of beeswax, its sweetness mingling with the faint, musty scent of ancient wood and stone that clings to the chapel like memory. Each candle seems to hold its own rhythm, a slow, deliberate pulse that matches your heartbeat, and you feel a delicate pressure in the soles of your feet, as though the warmth of light is reaching through the floor, brushing at your senses like a quiet hand. The shadows it casts stretch in soft, undulating lines along the walls, twisting and folding in shapes that almost speak, and you imagine that the flames themselves have heard the unseen readers, leaning forward to catch every whispered syllable of scripture that drifts through the air. You brush your fingers along the edge of the pews, rough with age yet polished by touch, and the warmth of the candles seems to reach through the wood, mingling with the cold stone beneath your knees, creating a delicate balance of presence and absence that is almost tangible. The air tastes faintly of honey and smoke, layered over the subtle chill of the stone floor. And you notice how each breath carries a faint vibration from the candles, a rhythm so slow and steady that it feels like the chapel itself has learned to breathe with the flames. You kneel before a small grouping of candles, noticing the faint crackle of wax as it melts, and the glow brushes against your hands, illuminating the fine lines of your skin. And you imagine the light has memorized every touch it has ever felt and holds them quietly within its warmth. Somewhere near the rafters, a shaft of sunlight filters through a high window, catching the floating smoke and turning it to a shimmering haze. And you feel that the candles are speaking in response, their flames bending slightly toward the light as though drawn to a shared memory of illumination. You sense the presence of countless unseen readers, and the candles seem to lean into the echoes of their voices, absorbing the words into their wax, and you feel a gentle, almost imperceptible vibration in the air, as though every syllable leaves a soft imprint in warmth and light. The chapel feels alive in a way that is both quiet and expansive. Each flicker a heartbeat, each glow a quiet affirmation, and you notice how the shadows seem to sway in tandem with the cadence of the unseen recitations, folding the air around you in gentle, undulating patterns. You inhale slowly, savoring the mingling scents of wax and stone, smoke and sunlight, and notice the subtle warmth that rises from the floor, curling around your ankles and calves, a reminder that even in stillness, the space holds its own life and memory, breathing softly beneath your touch. A candle near the altar leans toward another, and the shadows it casts ripple across the wall, creating delicate patterns that seem to trace the contours of the unseen voices as they read. each shape a silent echo of syllables carried across time and held gently in the air. You feel the texture of wax beneath your fingertips as you trace a line along a candle's side, warm, soft, and yielding, yet firm enough to hold its shape. And you imagine that the flame itself remembers every hand that has ever rested there, every whisper that has brushed against its light. The air moves faintly, carrying with it the gentle scent of melting wax and the faint metallic temps of old nails and hinges. And you notice that each breath seems to hum with quiet resonance, as if the chapel itself has learned the rhythm of voices it cannot see. You rise slowly, feeling the soft pull of warmth against your back and arms, and notice that each candle flickers in subtle conversation, leaning slightly toward one another, a gentle communion of light that has witnessed centuries of devotion and still holds the memory of every presence. The shadows stretch across the floor in long, fluid shapes that shimmer as you move, and you imagine that they are listening too. Each darkened edge a silent witness to the reading of scriptures that drift through the chapel unseen, holding the words in gentle suspension like delicate threads of sound. The subtle heat of the flames brushes against your cheeks as you walk down the aisle, the scent of honeyed wax filling your senses, and you feel an almost sacred rhythm in the air, a cadence that rises and falls with the invisible voices, intertwining with the quiet pulse of the chapel itself. You pause near the altar and notice a small candle, its flame steady despite the faint draft that drifts through the high window, and the air feels almost tender here, thick with the memory of devotion and the quiet attention of light, as though the flame itself has been waiting for your presence. The chapel seems to hold its breath in unison with you, the warmth of the candles seeping into the stone and wood, into your clothing, into the very air you breathe. And you realize that this quiet companionship has endured long before you arrived, a silent congregation of light and patience. A faint rustle reaches your ears, like a page turning somewhere beyond vision, and the candles respond almost imperceptibly, their flames leaning and swaying, catching the shadows in subtle movements that seem to trace the shape of words you cannot hear, yet understand by presence alone. You rest your hand lightly against the smooth wax, feeling a pulse almost imperceptible, and the warmth climbs gently into your palm, fingertips, and arm, leaving behind a residue of memory, a quiet echo of devotion, a sense that the unseen readers have shared their stories with these flames for centuries. You notice the subtle glow reflected on the polished stone floor, a soft mirror of light and shadow, and it feels as if the chapel has become an intimate companion, breathing with the flames, listening with the walls, and offering you the quiet luxury of time and attention that stretches like honeyed silk. The distant murmur of voices drifts faintly in the air, perhaps imagined, perhaps real, and the candles respond in kind, their light deepening slightly, as though acknowledging the presence of a listener who has finally arrived to witness the subtle interplay of warmth, wax, and invisible devotion. You take a slow step back, letting the warmth of the aisle brush against your ankles, noticing the gentle sway of flames in every corner. And the chapel feels alive with a quiet symphony, each flicker a note, each glow a verse, and the invisible voices seem to hum along, soft and patient. A final glance along the row of candles leaves you with a sense of gentle continuity, a quiet knowledge that these flames have been keeping time and memory long before your presence, and that each whisper, Each word of Scripture is held in their soft, steady warmth, a witness to devotion that will outlast you. You step toward the door, the warmth of the candles brushing the back of your neck, the subtle scent of wax lingering in your nostrils, and you carry with you the quiet echo of patience and light, knowing that this gentle communion will remain with you like a memory of soft, slow breathing long after the chapel falls silent again. You walk quietly into the chapel once more, noticing the faint aroma of worn robes and polished wood that drifts along with the lingering scent of beeswax. And in the soft pool of light, you see him, a figure seated in silent devotion. The monk sits with his back straight, shoulders relaxed, hands folded over his knees, and his robes gather around him like gentle waves of fabric, each crease softened by the weight of years spent in quiet observation and patient attention. The air around him is still, yet it vibrates faintly with a warmth you cannot see, as if his presence alone has absorbed centuries of devotion and breath. The echoes of whispered prayers and the memory of flickering candlelight settling into the fabric of his being. You notice how he tilts his head slightly, eyes closed, yet the faint movement of his eyelids suggests that he perceives far more than the eye can capture, sensing the subtle rhythm of voices that float through the chapel like delicate threads of sound. A thin shaft of light falls across the stone floor, tracing a line up to the edge of his robe, and you feel the quiet intensity of his attention, as though the air itself has thickened, carrying the faint scent of incense long since burned, a residue of devotion suspended in the stillness. You step closer, careful not to disturb the weight of silence that seems to radiate from him, and notice the faint tremor of his fingers as they rest against each other, a rhythm in tune with the hidden voices that read each syllable brushing against the contours of his awareness. The chapel feels larger in his presence, the walls seeming to lean back in quiet reverence, and the distant hum of unseen readers mingles with the faint creak of wooden beams, creating a delicate harmony that enfolds you like a slow, warm tide of sound and memory. You feel the smooth stone beneath your feet, cool and solid, grounding you as the warmth of his quiet presence rises subtly through the floor, mingling with the residual heat of candlelight, and you imagine that even the air is attuned to his silent listening. A soft draft stirs through the high windows, brushing against your face and carrying with it the faint scent of rain on moss, and you notice how he does not shift, does not respond, yet seems to drink in the movement of air and the subtle undulations of light with the patience of centuries. You trace your gaze along the folds of his robe, roughened slightly by age, yet softened by touch, and feel that it bears the memory of countless nights spent in this chapel. Hours folded into fabric, each thread absorbing the cadence of Scripture, read by voices no one could see. The flicker of a candle near the altar catches your eye, and you see its light reflected in the gentle curve of his hands, warm and golden, and you sense that the flame and the monk share a quiet communion, each aware of the other, yet neither needing acknowledgement to exist. You inhale slowly, tasting the faint honeyed sweetness of wax and the earthy scent of stone, and feel the warmth of his presence brush against your shoulders, subtle and invisible, as though the chapel itself has wrapped you both in the same delicate attention, a shared intimacy with silence. Somewhere behind the rafters, a bird calls faintly, and the sound seems to drift down into the space between him and you, threading through the rhythm of unseen voices, and you notice the way his body inclines slightly toward the sound, a slow, deliberate acknowledgement of the world beyond stone walls. You notice the delicate motion of his chest as he breathes, slow and steady, and imagine that each inhale gathers the words of Scripture into his being, carrying them through a quiet system of memory and devotion that the chapel itself seems to recognize and hold with tenderness. The candlelight flickers, casting dancing shadows along the floor and walls, and you feel the contours of the space shift subtly, as though every shape and surface bends slightly toward the monk in deference, absorbing the invisible recital into the quiet fabric of its stone and wood. You rest your hand lightly against the cool edge of a pew, feeling the grain of polished wood, and notice how the warmth of his presence seems to mingle with the lingering glow of candlelight, creating a gentle bridge between the physical and the unseen that hums softly in the air. A faint scent of old parchment reaches your senses, as though the very walls remember manuscripts once read here aloud. And you imagine the monk has absorbed these traces, every word settling quietly into the folds of his robes and the creases of his skin carried invisibly in the air. You feel your shoulders relax under the gentle weight of his attention, though he does not speak, and the subtle vibration of his presence intertwines with the rhythm of the unseen voices, creating a shared cadence that you sense rather than hear, a quiet pulse of devotion and patience. The distant sunlight shifts behind a cloud, and a soft shadow brushes along the stone floor, and you notice how the monk does not move, yet seems to become part of the pattern, the rhythm of his breathing merging with the faint sway of light and shadow, like a slow, careful dance. You close your eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply the mingled scents of beeswax, aged wood, and stone warmed by sunlight, and feel the quiet steadiness of his presence fill the space within you, a gentle, patient rhythm that folds over your senses like soft linen on chilled skin. A faint breeze stirs the robes around his ankles, and you notice how even the air seems to pause, as though reluctant to disturb him, carrying the warmth of candlelight and memory through the chapel in soft, undulating waves, leaving a trace of devotion in every gentle movement. You trace a slow path down the aisle, feeling the smooth cold of stone beneath your hands and feet, and sense the monk's presence lingering in every shadow, every flicker of light, as though he has left a quiet imprint of attention and patience on the air itself. The chapel holds a soft resonance, the hum of unseen voices weaving through the warmth of candlelight and the quiet stillness of the monk, and you feel that his listening is a gentle gift, a bridge between memory and presence, between the unseen reading and your own attentive breath. You rest your hand on a small candle near the altar, feeling the heat of wax mingling with the air thick with devotion, and notice how the monk's stillness seems to anchor the space, the invisible voices threading around him in slow, deliberate arcs that linger in the corners like a delicate promise. You take a slow step back, feeling the warmth of the aisle and the subtle vibration of air carrying the invisible reading, and realize that even in stillness, the monk has shaped the chapel into a vessel for memory and attention, a quiet sanctuary for voices no one sees but many hearts perceive. The sunlight shifts again, slanting across the stone floor, and you feel the gentle pulse of his presence in your own chest, a reminder that listening can be a sacred act and that devotion sometimes speaks louder in silence than in words, as the air itself holds the careful imprint of patience. You breathe in the mingled scents of wax, sunlight, and stone, feeling the warmth of the unseen voices curl around your shoulders, and step slowly toward the door, carrying with you the quiet, steady presence of the monk who never spoke yet always heard, leaving a memory that lingers long after the chapel falls silent. You step into the courtyard as rain begins to fall softly, each drop brushing against your skin like a delicate whisper, and feel the cool, steady rhythm press gently against your shoulders, carrying the scent of wet earth and moss into your lungs. The stone beneath your feet grows slick with the patter of water, smooth and dark, and you notice how the droplets cling to your shoes, pooling briefly in worn grooves before trickling away, tracing slow, quiet paths that mimic the rhythm of unseen voices reading somewhere beyond the walls. The air is thick with the mingled aromas of rain, damp wood, and ancient stone, and you feel the subtle weight of moisture pressing against your skin, a soft, insistent reminder that even the smallest elements of the world are alive with motion and memory. A breeze stirs the leaves along the perimeter, carrying them into gentle spirals that quiver in the rain, and you notice how each movement seems to echo the cadence of the unseen reading, the tiny oscillations of life responding quietly to a voice, "No, I can see." You raise your gaze to the chapel above, watching water streak down the glass, and the droplets refract the soft interior light like shards of gold, illuminating the courtyard with a gentle glow that feels alive, as if the rain itself has been invited into the sacred space. The scent of wet stone rises from the path beneath your feet, mingling with the faint aroma of candle wax that drifts from the open windows, and you feel a strange, slow comfort in this layering of textures, as though all the elements conspire to create a delicate, living memory. Each raindrop that lands on your skin carries its own faint rhythm, and as you close your eyes, you sense that the chapel and the courtyard are joined in the invisible pulse of reading, the water falling like soft punctuation on the long, unseen recitation. You run a hand along the edge of a moss-covered wall, feeling the slick coolness against your palm, and notice the faint tremor in the stone beneath, a resonance that seems to answer the cadence of the voice, carrying it outward, up into the air, and down again into the earth. The courtyard is empty of human presence, yet it is full of sound, of texture, of slow, deliberate movement. And you notice how each puddle mirrors the sky above, the shifting clouds and rain, and how even the reflected light seems to hold the memory of voices that speak in quiet, patient cycles. You feel the gentle tap of water on your shoulders and back, cool but not unpleasant, and realize that each droplet carries a faint echo of scripture, a residue of meaning in its soft descent, tracing invisible lines across stone and skin alike, writing on the world in silence. The ivy along the chapel walls shivers in the rain, and each leaf seems to catch and release moisture in a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if the plants themselves have learned to listen, to respond, to hold the quiet resonance of unseen recitation in the tender folds of green. You notice the way the light from the chapel windows bends through the raindrops, scattering in gentle prisms across the courtyard, and the scene feels almost dreamlike, a quiet suspension where each element, stone, water, light, shadow, exists to witness the reading in its own subtle, silent way. You kneel by a small puddle, dipping a fingertip into its cool surface, and feel the concentric ripples spread outward, carrying with them the faint warmth of candlelight from the interior, mingling the seen and unseen into a quiet, almost sacred rhythm that brushes against your awareness. The scent of wet earth and fallen leaves rises sharply as the rain thickens, and you feel it press softly against your cheeks, the small droplets running along your eyelashes and lips, leaving a delicate trace of the world's patience. And you imagine that the chapel itself holds this moment as carefully as the unseen voices hold their recitation. The air vibrates faintly, not with sound, but with presence, as though the chapel, the rain, the moss, and even your own breath have become instruments tuned to the cadence of Scripture, each element responding in soft, patient waves that ripple gently through the courtyard. You notice the subtle shimmer along the roof tiles, each bead of water poised before it slips into the gutter, and imagine that each drop carries a word, a syllable, a fragment of devotion, falling slowly into the world and leaving its faint imprint in memory, light, and stone. The courtyard feels intimate and vast at once, the rain creating small, liquid pathways that meander across worn surfaces, while the distant light of the chapel glows steadily, and you sense that the voices reading within and the motion outside are woven into a single, quiet tapestry. You rest your palm against the cold, wet stone of a low wall, feeling the subtle tremor of temperature change, the faint movement of water seeping through cracks, and notice how the world seems attuned to the rhythm of reading. Each surface, a quiet echo of syllables carried invisibly through the air. A soft wind brushes through the courtyard, carrying the mingled scents of wet leaves, stone, and distant firewood, and you feel it curl around your arms and neck, tracing slow, deliberate patterns as if the air itself is learning to memorize the cadence of Scripture that drifts unseen from the chapel. You watch water trickle along carved grooves in stone, following the contours of centuries, and feel the slow pulse of presence in each movement. The invisible voices mingling with the rain in a duet of patience and devotion that leaves the courtyard at once drenched, alive, and sacred. The reflection of candlelight in the shallow puddles shimmers gently, scattering soft fragments of glow across the ground, and you notice the interplay of rain and light, stone and shadow, and feel that every element is holding its place carefully, in quiet reverence to the unseen reading. You bend low to touch the surface of a small stone basin collecting rainwater, feeling the chill of it seep into your skin, and sense that even this simple container is part of the ritual, a quiet vessel for memory, for moisture, for the rhythm of voices no one sees. The rain intensifies slightly, and each droplet splashes softly against the courtyard floor, the sound muted and delicate, like fingers tracing over parchment, and you feel the pulse of Scripture echoing in the motion, a rhythm that intertwines with your own breath and heartbeat in quiet communion. You step slowly through the puddles, letting water lap around your shoes, and notice the delicate sheen along the moss-covered steps, feeling the temperature shift beneath your feet as warmth from the chapel spreads outward, mingling with the coolness of rain and stone to create a gentle, living balance. The air smells faintly of smoke now, carried from a hearth unseen, and you feel it mingle with the rain-slicked courtyard, the warmth and dampness creating a soft, enveloping embrace. And you imagine the unseen voices weaving their reading into every corner of the space, into every element that breathes and moves. You pause beneath the dripping eave, watching droplets fall in gentle arcs, and notice how each one seems to echo the rhythm of the unseen reading, the world itself participating in the act of devotion. Each drop a soft punctuation in a long, patient sentence written on stone and air. The courtyard, drenched and quiet, feels both infinite and intimate. The sound of rain merging with the cadence of invisible voices, with your own slow, deliberate breathing, and you feel the delicate intersection of time, memory, and presence, as though all is held carefully in this singular, luminous moment. You lift your gaze to the chapel doors, faint light spilling out onto wet stone, and notice the way the rain blurs edges, softening the boundaries between inside and out, seen and unseen, and feel a quiet, tender understanding that the reading flows freely between both, carried in air, stone, and water alike. The wet earth presses faintly against your shoes, the droplets sliding slowly down your coat, and you sense that the courtyard itself has learned to listen, to hold attention, to fold presence into patience. And you carry with you the memory of rain, light, and quiet voices as you step back toward the warmth of the chapel. You remember how the path to the old chapel curved gently through the orchard, where the air smelled faintly of ripening apples and damp leaves, and each step upon the packed earth felt soft and uneven, like a heartbeat hidden beneath the soil. The evening was always patient there, lingering longer among the branches than anywhere else, so that the sun bled slowly through the last of the light, warm at first, then turning pale and thin until even the shadows seemed reluctant to deepen. You carried nothing with you but the hush of your own thoughts, listening to the quiet rustle of the trees whose limbs stretched like dark arms across the path, holding the night back for a moment longer, as though they, too, wanted you to arrive slowly. The chapel itself was never grand, only a square of stone, softened by time and covered in moss, as though it had been there since before the orchard itself. The windows narrow and filled with glass, so thick the outside world blurred as if through tears. When you pushed the wooden door open, it gave the same low sigh it always had, a sound neither welcoming nor resistant, just tired, like something too old to be surprised by anyone arriving so late in the day. Inside, the air felt cooler, smelling of stone dust and extinguished candles, and the walls held the fading warmth of sunlight, now slipping away from the highest corners, where cobwebs hung like delicate curtains, trembling in some faint, secret draught. There was no one waiting, though you had never expected anyone. Only the old lectern at the far end, carved from dark wood and polished smooth by centuries of invisible hands, setting books upon it, turning pages with unhurried care. You approached slowly because the place always made you quiet, not in fear, but in the way one grows quiet before falling snow, as though the silence itself had weight and needed to be handled gently so it would not break. The scriptures lay open as they always did, though you never knew who opened them. The thin pages curled faintly at the edges like autumn leaves. The ink faded, yet still holding the shape of words, waiting for someone to give them breath. You stood there for a moment, hands resting lightly on the wood, feeling the smooth grain beneath your fingertips, and wondered not, for the first time, if the voices that came here at night began with a single reader or with none at all, because when it happened, it was never sudden, never a burst of sound, only the faintest threading of words, at first, like wind slipping through grass, as though the chapel itself were remembering something aloud in a language older than memory. You never saw anyone, not then, not ever. Yet the voices would gather slowly until there were many, some rising gently, others falling soft as breath, weaving together until the air trembled with something that felt alive but not entirely present. They never read quickly, always with that same patience the evening had. Each syllable carrying the weight of someone speaking, not to be heard, but to keep something from vanishing altogether. As though the act of saying the words kept the world from forgetting. The sound filled the chapel like water, finding every hollow place, echoing off the stone in a way that made it impossible to tell whether the voices came from before you, behind you, or from nowhere at all, suspended like mist above still water. Sometimes you closed your eyes because seeing nothing and hearing everything felt like standing inside a dream. And the dream always smelled faintly of wax and dust, the coolness of stone against your skin as real as the air you breathed. You never stayed long after the reading ended, because it always ended the same way it began, softly, slowly, as though the voices were winding down into sleep themselves, leaving the final words drifting like leaves across the surface of silence. When you stepped outside, the orchard would already be half dark, the first stars trembling faintly above the black edge of the trees, and the air cooler now, carrying the smell of earth settling into its night rhythms, with crickets beginning somewhere unseen. The path home always felt longer in the dark, though you knew it was not. Only the shadows stretching themselves fully now, no longer held back by the orchard or the chapel or the warmth of the day you left behind. And you would walk slowly through it all, carrying no voice but your own footsteps, wondering if the scriptures had been read for you alone or for the night itself, which seemed to hold its breath each time, as though listening to. You step into the quiet night, where the chapel seems smaller beneath the vast, ink-dark sky, and notice how the stars hang low, each one trembling softly like a delicate heartbeat, as though listening closely to the unseen readers inside. The cool night air brushes your skin gently, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine, and you feel a slow shiver rise along your spine, as if the very fabric of the world is stretching toward the cadence of invisible voices that drift like smoke. You lie back on the soft, damp grass, feeling the blades bend beneath your weight and the subtle pressure of earth rising to meet your body, and notice how the faint rustle of leaves becomes a quiet harmony, entwined with the rhythm of reading that floats unseen above. The stars pulse faintly, mirrored in the puddles left from earlier rain, and the reflection shimmers in gentle ripples, as though the heavens themselves have leaned closer to witness, their light falling in fragments that scatter across stone, grass, and air in slow, deliberate arcs. A gentle wind moves through the branches, carrying with it the faint, sweet scent of night-blooming flowers, and you inhale slowly, feeling the perfume wrap around your chest and arms, mingling with the cold air, creating a warmth that seems both delicate and infinite, like the memory of a whispered word. The chapel doors glow faintly in the distance, a soft amber light spilling onto wet stones and damp earth, and you sense that the voices within are rising higher, somehow threading outward, reaching for the heavens. And you feel the invisible bridge between sky, earth, and air in your chest. You notice the slight tremor of the grass beneath you, the way it bends against the night breeze, and imagine that even the earth has leaned closer, listening, shaping itself into gentle curves that echo the cadence of the scriptures, each syllable brushing against the soles of your feet like soft water. The stars above flicker slowly, a gentle, deliberate rhythm, holding its breath, bending toward the reading, letting the quiet pulse of unseen voices thread seamlessly through sky, stone, and flesh. You run your fingers through the wet grass, feeling its cool slickness against your palms, and sense the gentle weight of rain lingering in each blade, a subtle reminder that even after absence, the world remembers, and the voices that read within the chapel have left their traces pressed softly into night and air. The wind carries the faint scent of old wood and candle wax from the chapel, mingling with the earth and sky, and you feel it curled gently around your shoulders. A tender embrace that bridges the space between unseen voices and distant stars, wrapping the world in a rhythm both fragile and enduring. You tilt your head to the heavens, letting the cool night air press into your lungs, and notice that the stars seem to lean lower, trembling ever so slightly, as though bending to hear the unseen scripture. A quiet communion where sky and earth and human heart are folded together in slow, gentle accord. The distant murmur of leaves and the occasional rustle of small creatures in the underbrush creates a delicate counterpoint to the reading, and you feel the night expand around you, infinite yet intimate, as though every element, grass, air, stone, light, has joined the invisible chorus of devotion. You feel the subtle pulse of energy along your spine as the voices rise and fall, faint but insistent, and notice how the night sky seems to echo the same pattern. Each star a faint punctuation, each flicker of light a gentle accentuation of the scripture no eyes can see but all hearts can sense. A cloud drifts across the moon, softening its glow, and you feel the slight chill of shadow brushing your face, mingling with warmth left by the earth and the slow, deliberate rhythm of reading, creating a gentle tension that is neither sharp nor alarming, but quietly alive, like breath against skin. You roll onto your side, letting the cool grass press against your cheek, and notice how the sounds of night, the hum of insects, the far-off ripple of water, the faint rustle of trees intertwine with the invisible recitation, forming a delicate tapestry of presence, movement, and memory that feels almost sacred. You reach out a hand to a nearby puddle, letting your fingertips touch the smooth, cool surface, and see the reflection of stars tremble slightly, each ripple folding gently into the next, mirroring the cadence of scripture that drifts like smoke from the chapel into the night sky. The faint scent of wet stone rises from the nearby wall, mixing with the aroma of damp grass and distant pine, and you feel the night pressing softly into your senses, a quiet reminder that even unseen voices leave their weight, their warmth, and their gentle resonance in the world around them. You lift your gaze toward the horizon, where the first hint of dawn lingers in the distance, soft and pink, and notice that the stars remain stubborn and patient, and you realize the reading continues across time and space, the invisible voices threading through both night and approaching day. A gentle breeze stirs again, carrying with it the faint whisper of wet leaves and cold earth, and you feel it curl around your ankles and wrists, tracing soft, deliberate patterns that mirror the rhythm of unseen words, each syllable caught lightly by air and skin, a bridge between the chapel and sky. You lie back fully, letting your arms rest alongside you, and feel the subtle vibration of life beneath the earth. The faint thrum of unseen voices, the pulse of stars, and the gentle sway of branches above, all folding into one long, slow, eternal sentence that is both comfort and wonder. The reflection of the chapel's light shimmers faintly in the puddles near your body, and you sense the warmth and devotion held within the walls reach outward, mingling with the night, the rain, the earth, and the soft glow of stars, until everything seems to hum in quiet, patient harmony. You run your hand along the damp grass again, feeling the weight of water against your fingertips, the coolness pressing softly into your skin, and realize that even absence has presence, that silence carries a shape, and that the unseen reading has left its trace on every surface it touches tonight. The faint chorus of distant insects rises and falls with the rhythm of your breath, and you notice how the night seems alive, responsive, attuned to the cadence of Scripture, as though every element, earth, sky, water, air, and your own body has become part of an invisible, delicate orchestra of devotion. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the chill of night mingle with the warmth rising from the earth beneath you, the quiet weight of air, the pulse of unseen voices threading through space, and you understand that listening fully and patiently is its own form of communion, deep and sustaining. The breeze softens, the stars flicker gently, and the distant light of the chapel seems to pulse in time with the reading, carrying the warmth of wax and devotion across the darkened yard, threading invisible lines from earth to sky, and leaving a gentle imprint on your chest, slow and tender. You inhale deeply, tasting the night-wet earth, pine, distant firewood, and let the rhythm of unseen Scripture settle into your heartbeat, each word folding into the cadence of your own breath, a quiet meditation that seems to stretch both backward and forward in time, infinite and intimate. A single star flickers brightly above, mirrored faintly in a shallow puddle near your elbow, and you feel the gentle swell of presence around you. The chapel, the night, the unseen voices, all converging in a quiet, patient moment that is at once ephemeral and eternal, soft as memory itself. You rise slowly to your knees, feeling the damp grass cling to your skin, and notice the way the night air wraps around your shoulders, the faint warmth of candlelight drifting outward, and the subtle resonance of reading threading the world into a single, slow, unbroken breath of devotion. The first whisper of dawn light touches the horizon, pale and tender, and you feel the invisible voices receding softly, leaving behind a memory etched in stars, air, and earth. A quiet understanding that what is unseen can still be held, felt, and carried like a gentle treasure into the waking world. You remember the evening when the wind carried the first hint of autumn, the air cooler than the day before, brushing softly against your face as though the season wished to arrive without stirring the world too quickly. The sky had taken on that faint, deepening blue that comes only before dusk, when light still lingers but begins to fold itself away slowly, and clouds hovered like pale ships caught between the fading sun and the quiet night ahead. You followed the narrow path leading to the chapel, each step releasing the smell of dry leaves and earth. The stones beneath your shoes, warm from the sun yet cooling steadily as shadows, lengthened across the silent fields surrounding you. The trees along the path bent gently in the wind, their branches swaying as though murmuring among themselves, scattering leaves that drifted down lazily, their edges crisp yet fragile, carrying the faint scent of sap and wood into the cooling air. When you reached the chapel door, You paused for a moment, feeling the carved wood beneath your fingertips, smooth in some places, weathered in others, as though generations of hands had shaped its surface without ever leaving a single mark behind. Inside, the air felt still and warm, holding faint traces of smoke from earlier candles, a sweetness mixed with the dry smell of old wood and parchment, as though the walls themselves had been steeped in prayer for countless years. The lectern stood waiting near the center, the scriptures resting open upon it, their pages pale and thin as dried petals, each one edged with the faintest curl from time and hands and the weight of words that had crossed centuries. You touched the edge lightly, feeling the faint give of the page under your finger, as though even this small contact carried some unspoken reverence, a promise not to disturb what had endured so long in quiet patience. The first voice rose softly, low and even, carrying the words across the chapel like a slow tide, each syllable slipping into the air as though spoken not by breath alone, but by something older than anyone present could name. Others followed, blending together until no single voice stood apart, weaving scripture into a sound both steady and tender, as though the air itself wished to hold the words without letting any fall to the stone floor below. The rhythm filled the room the way sunlight fills water, spreading without edges or haste, the kind of sound that seemed less spoken than grown, like vines climbing toward the eaves of some long-forgotten house in a quiet countryside. Through the high windows, the light had begun to thin, turning from pale gold to the first muted gray of evening, shadows gathering in the corners, while the last warmth of day slipped gently from the stone walls around you. The voices carried on, neither hurried nor slow, only steady, like the measured swing of a pendulum in a clock left to its quiet keeping, each word falling into place with a weight both delicate and unchanging. You closed your eyes for a moment, listening as the sound settled deeper, not only through the room, but into your own breath, until it felt as though you were holding the words somewhere inside rather than hearing them outside. The faint smell of cooling wax drifted from the candles lining the walls, their flames moving just slightly in the draft from the high windows, small lights breathing against the deepening dusk gathering beyond the stone threshold. You thought then of the countless nights before this one, when the same scriptures had been read by voices just as unseen, their words rising into air that had long since drifted away, leaving only the memory of sound behind. The evening deepened slowly, the blue outside the windows darkening into a softer, heavier shade, while the first star appeared like a pinprick in the fabric of sky, small yet unblinking above the sleeping trees and fields. Still the voices spoke, even as the light thinned further, even as the first coolness of night slipped through the stone and wood, carrying with it the faintest smell of damp earth rising from the ground beyond the chapel door. Each word seemed to linger slightly after it was spoken, as though unwilling to leave the space too quickly, the syllables folding themselves carefully into the stillness before giving way to the next breath, the next phrase, the next line. You watched the candles burning lower, the wax gathered in small pools around their bases, thin trails running down their sides like veins of pale honey, the wicks glowing softly where the fire touched them again and again. The air inside the chapel felt neither warm nor cold now, only balanced, as though the place itself existed between seasons, between night and day, between sound and silence, holding itself in a stillness that waited for nothing at all. When the voices ended at last, It was without pause or ceremony, the words simply falling away like leaves drifting from a branch, leaving behind a quiet, not empty, but full, as though shaped by everything that had filled it before. You remained there long after, listening to the silence as if it were a continuation of the reading, as though the absence of words still carried the same rhythm, the same slow turning of something too vast to name aloud. When you stepped outside, the night had taken the last of the horizon, stars brightening like scattered grains of salt, and the wind carried the faint smell of smoke from some distant fire drifting low across the darkened fields. The path home felt softer now beneath your feet, as though the earth itself had cooled enough to rest. The grass stirring slightly in the breeze, small insects singing in the hedges, though you could not see them in the dark. Above, the moon had risen pale and watchful, shining over puddles left by the previous night's rain, each one a small silver mirror you passed without stopping, their surfaces trembling faintly whenever the wind moved across them. You walked slowly, as though the voices still followed, not in sound, but in feeling, like footsteps pressing softly beside your own, leaving no mark except the sense that you were not entirely alone in the sleeping countryside. The night deepened, carrying the faint smell of cut hay from some far field, the sweetness drifting like memory itself, thin and gentle, wrapping the air the way the scripture had wrapped the walls of the chapel only moments before. And though you reached your door at last, the house waiting dark and quiet, you paused before entering, looking once more at the long road behind you, the moonlight lying silver across its stones like pages yet to be read. Even as you stepped inside, the words seemed to follow, not as sound now, but as weightless threads woven through your thoughts, settling with the same unhurried care the voices had used when lifting them from the pages hours earlier. Long after you lay down, the rhythm of the reading still moved somewhere deep within you, steady and patient, the echo of voices no one saw shaping the silence into something that felt less like emptiness and more like rest itself. You remember another evening when the sky stretched pale and endless above the hills, the air holding that quiet coolness that comes only when the day has forgotten its warmth, but night has not yet gathered its full darkness. The path you followed felt softer beneath your feet this time, the earth still damp from a brief rain earlier, carrying the smell of wet grass and stone, a smell both sharp and sweet beneath the drifting air around you. The chapel waited ahead as though it had always been waiting, its walls darkened by time yet touched faintly by the fading light, the roof edges lined with shadow, the windows glimmering faintly where the sun still lingered behind the hills. As you approached, the wooden door stood slightly open, not enough to invite or refuse, only enough to suggest someone had entered before you, their passage leaving a breath of cooler air spilling from within into the dimming evening. Inside, the light bent itself across the floor in narrow shapes, thin strips of gold falling through the tall windows, dust floating within them like tiny, aimless insects drifting wherever the air carried them, weightless yet glimmering whenever they crossed the sunbeams. The scriptures rested on the lectern as before, their pages unmoving, their edges curled faintly from years of use, the ink upon them dark yet softened in places where fingers had turned them, where time itself had breathed across the words again and again. You stood for a moment without moving, the quiet so deep you could almost hear the sound of your own breath shaping itself, the faint creak of the floor beneath your weight, the only voice yet heard within the waiting room. Then the first sound rose softly, so softly you almost thought the wind had moved across the rafters. But no wind entered here, only the beginning of a voice speaking words older than the walls, older than the roof, older than memory itself. Others followed, not quickly, not slowly, only steadily, the sound gathering like small ripples across a pond, each voice joining without ever rising above the rest, their tones neither sharp nor faint, carrying scripture the way roots carry water through soil. The words themselves seemed to hang in the air longer than any echo should, not vanishing when spoken, but remaining as though the room wished to hold them, as though even silence wanted to taste their shape before letting them go. You listened without moving, your breath falling into rhythm with the sound, the way leaves fall into rhythm with the wind, the way tides fall into rhythm with the moon, steady and unbroken, without beginning or ending, only continuing as though eternal. The light thinned further through the windows, shadows climbing slowly up the walls as the sun dipped behind the hills, the last gold lingering only on the highest points before slipping away entirely, leaving the chapel bathed in dimness and flickering flame. Candles lined the walls as before, their light unsteady yet warm, small fires breathing against the darker air, the smell of melted wax thickening faintly as the flames bent and straightened again beneath, the faint draughts moving through stone corridors unseen. You thought of how many nights this had happened, how many evenings these voices had risen when no one stood beside them, how many centuries the same words had traveled from mouth to air to ear without ever changing their slow, patient tone. Perhaps the walls themselves had learned them by now, had gathered the weight of each syllable the way would gather smoke or fabric gather scent, holding traces too faint to notice, yet too deep to wash away entirely, even across generations. The longer you listened, the more it felt as though the voices belonged less to people than to the space itself, as though the air carried its own memory, speaking to whoever would enter rather than to whoever might be waiting outside. The pages on the lectern turned without hands, slow and soundless, each sheet lifting itself slightly before falling flat again. The faintest shift of paper upon paper, like the softest footstep across a floor too old to creak beneath its weight. Still the words rose, steady as breathing, carrying with them the scent of wax, of dust, of old wood rubbed smooth by countless palms, of stone holding the coolness of night even when sunlight had burned against it all the long afternoon. You felt the sound gather inside you the way water gathers in hollow places after rain, filling slowly without rushing, without overflowing, only deepening until you could no longer tell whether you carried the words or they carried you instead. The candles burned lower, their flames narrowing, their wicks bending under the weight of heat, the wax gathered in thin rivers down their sides, pooling at the bases where the stone floor met the iron holders rooted firmly against the walls. Outside, the first stars appeared faintly above the hills, silver points pushing through the last dimness of twilight, their light too far to warm anything, too far to touch the earth except through the quiet presence of their distant, watchful shining. The voices neither quickened nor slowed, speaking as though time itself bent differently inside this room, as though clocks would refuse to tick here, as though seasons might hesitate before passing across a threshold so steeped in unchanging sound and breath. You felt the night deepen beyond the walls, the air turning cooler, the smell of damp leaves drifting faintly through whatever small openings the stone allowed, carrying with it the sense of fields darkening, trees standing silent, grass bowing under wind. The words reached some ending at last, though no ending was spoken, only the sound falling away like water sinking into soil, leaving behind a quiet so complete you felt it touching your skin the way cold air touches open water. You stood a long while before moving, the candles still burning, though lower now, the shadows climbing higher toward the beams above, the lectern waiting with its pages closed once more, as though nothing at all had passed across them tonight. When you stepped outside, the air met you with the coolness of full night, the fields black beneath the rising moon, the smell of earth and rain and wood smoke drifting like faint breath across the hedges and stones lining the path home. You walked slowly, as though carrying something weightless yet heavy, something neither seen nor named, only felt the way warmth lingers after fire, the way music lingers after strings still themselves, the way voices linger long after words have ended. The stars multiplied above you, their light unmoving, their distances immeasurable, yet their presence familiar, as though they too had listened across centuries, as though they too had leaned closer whenever the voices rose through windows into the waiting dark. By the time you reached your door, the wind had grown softer, carrying only the faintest sense now. The night folded fully around the fields and hills, the world holding its breath as though listening still, though no words remained to hear. Long after you lay down, the rhythm continued, somewhere inside you, the voices shaping dreams, the way rivers shaped valleys, slowly, patiently, without haste, leaving behind a silence that felt neither empty nor full, only endless, like night itself above sleeping earth. You wake to the faint silver of moonlight slipping through the narrow window, its glow brushing the edges of the room with pale softness, as though afraid to disturb the quiet that has gathered through the long hours of night. The air carries the coolness of early morning, though the sun has not yet returned. A stillness lying across the floor like a thin sheet of water, unmoving, glimmering faintly where the moonlight finds its patient surface. You rise slowly, your steps soundless against the stone, the floor holding the night's coolness beneath your feet, the walls breathing their quiet breath around you, as though the entire place rests within a single, long-held dream. Outside, the fields lie dark beneath the fading stars, the grass bowed slightly where the dew has gathered, silver drops clinging to each blade, catching the faintest light as though each one holds a tiny reflection of the waiting sky. The chapel stands ahead where it always stands, its roof a black shape against the paling horizon, its windows dull and unlit now. The door closed, yet never seeming closed entirely, always holding some sense of quiet invitation beneath its wood. When you push it open, the hinges give only the faintest sigh, as though even the door knows how to keep its sounds soft here, the air inside warmer than the outside wind, yet filled with the faint scent of ash and wax. The candles have burned low through the night, small pools of cooled wax gathered beneath them like pale flowers fallen around each stem, their flames smaller now but steady, holding the shadows away from the center where the lectern waits. The scriptures lie open again, though no hand has touched them, their pages flat, yet marked faintly by the curling edges of age, the ink catching the candlelight in places as though some letters wish to shine while others wish to rest. You step closer, hearing only the small crackle of wick and wax, the the faint settling groan of wood in the rafters, the night's chill fading slowly beneath the breath of flame. As though warmth returns here one quiet inch at a time. Then, as though waiting for you, the first voice rises, soft enough that you almost mistake it for wind through distant branches, though the air outside lies still, the stars above fading without sound. As the sky grows paler beyond the hills, another joins it, then another, the tones weaving together, the way small streams meet and carry each other, their currents blending so gently that no single sound rises above the rest, only a chorus without haste or beginning, like water moving under ice. The words spill slowly into the room, each one shaped as though carved by breath itself, carried across the air toward walls that have heard them for centuries. Walls that hold every echo the way soil holds the memory of rain. You close your eyes, the sound wrapping around you like cloth, warm despite its softness, filling the spaces between candlelight and shadow, turning the empty air into something almost weightless, something felt more than heard, something carried beneath the skin. The pages turn without hands, each sheet lifting as though stirred by the voices themselves, falling with a whisper softer than falling ash. The inked lines waiting beneath the next glow of flame, as though patient for the next breath to read them. Outside the windows, the last stars vanish into the pale edge of dawn, the sky deepening toward colors slowly, the way frost melts from grass when sunlight finds it, the way dreams fade when waking comes gently rather than all at once. Still the voices rise and fall, carrying words older than the chapel walls, older than the roads leading here, older than the stones shaped by hands now dust, words passing through the air like wind through leaves that have returned each autumn. The longer you stand there, the less you feel your own weight, as though the sound itself lifts you slightly. The floor cool beneath your feet, yet distant somehow. The walls close, yet not confining, only holding you like the inside of a shell. The candles flicker when a faint draft moves through the high windows, the flames bowing briefly before straightening again, the wax trembling in its narrow cups. Shadows sliding slowly across the ceiling beams, like dark water over buried stones. You think of how many winters this place has seen, how many storms have broken over its roof while these words continued inside, how many voices have risen when no faces stood above them, the sound traveling through centuries like roots beneath frozen earth. The pages turn again. Another passage read by voices without breath, each word falling into the air like seeds into furrows, vanishing from sight yet remaining beneath the soil of silence, waiting to grow into memory long after the sound has gone. The sky beyond the chapel shifts toward morning at last, faint streaks of color spreading where darkness once gathered. The pale edges of clouds glowing softly as though someone lights them from behind, as though fire waits beyond the horizon. Inside, the words slow the way, rivers slow before meeting the sea, the tones deepening, softening, until the last one fades against the walls, leaving only the hush of air and the faint, uneven breaths of candle flames bending low. You open your eyes, the silence holding you differently now. Not empty, but full, the way earth feels full after rain, the way air feels full after bells stop ringing, the way the heart feels full when memory stands quietly beside it. The pages close without hands, the weight of parchment settling against itself, the lectern waiting once more in stillness, its grain dark beneath the soft waxy glow. its corners worn where centuries of elbows and palms have rested through readings unseen. When you step outside, the air meets you with the cool sweetness of morning, the fields silvered by dew, the hedges dark and wet, the stones along the path glistening faintly where water has gathered in their shallowest, smoothest places overnight. The first birds begin to call from the hedgerows, their notes carrying through the soft air without rush, as though even they know this hour asks for gentleness, for sounds shaped like drifting threads, rather than the bright edges of day. You walk slowly, the ground soft beneath your steps, the sense of wet grass and wood smoke drifting around you, the breeze carrying the faintest trace of blossoms somewhere beyond the walls, a sweetness so thin it feels like a remembered dream. The sky grows brighter with each step you take, the light spreading across the fields the way water spreads when poured, filling every hollow, sliding along every slope, touching each tree and stone until nothing remains hidden beneath the fading dark. By the time you reach your door, the sun waits just below the horizon, its presence felt more than seen, the air warming faintly as though fire lies behind a curtain about to be drawn slowly, steadily, without a single sound. Even as you lie down once more, the echo of voices remains, not loud, not clear, only lingering the way warmth lingers after flame, the way scent lingers after rain, the way song lingers in wood long after strings have stilled. You wake later than usual, the sun already warm against the shutters, the air carrying that softened brightness of early day, the kind that feels neither hurried nor sharp, only stretched out like linen drying beneath a wide and cloudless sky. The room around you holds the stillness of sleep's slow departure, corners filled with the faint scent of wood warmed by sunlight, the walls pale where light touches them, shadows thin and reaching across the floor like branches in shallow water. You rise carefully, as though the air itself might break if you move too quickly, the floor cool beneath your feet despite the warmth above, the boards creaking softly in a voice that has known the weight of countless mornings before yours. Outside the door, the world glows in shades of green and gold, the grass lifting its wet blades toward the sun, the hedges stirring faintly in a breeze carrying both the sweetness of clover and the distant dry smell of fields already plowed. You follow the narrow path toward the chapel once more, your steps slow beneath the low, sheltering branches, the ground soft where leaves have gathered through the night, each one darkened by dew until they seem carved from deep breathing shadows themselves. The door waits open this time, its wood holding sunlight like water held in a shallow bowl, the hinges quiet as you pass through, the cool dimness within meeting you like shade after a long road walked beneath the unbroken noon. Candles burn steadily along the walls, their flames small but upright, the air touched faintly by the scent of smoke and wax, that fragrance of centuries gathered layer upon layer, as though time itself could leave behind a perfume of flame. The lectern stands in its old place, the scriptures resting open upon it, their pages the color of straw in late summer, edges dark where countless days have left their slow fingerprints of air, dust, breath, and seasons folding through the years. You hear the voices begin again, though no one stands before the words, their first notes quiet, almost uncertain, like wind feeling its way through a grove after long stillness, finding the shape of leaves before rising fully through their branches. The sound gathers depth slowly, moving from corner to corner, as though the very stones wished to speak, the roof timbers answering softly, the floor carrying each tone downward, until even the earth below seems to hum in patient harmony. You close your eyes as the reading swells, the cadence neither hurried nor lingering too long, each phrase falling into the air the way petals fall into water, touching the surface before drifting outward in widening, almost imperceptible circles of sound. The sunlight through the high windows grows stronger as the words continue, each beam slanting across the air like golden cloth hung carefully between roof and floor, the dust within it moving as though time itself drifts more slowly in its glow. You notice how the pages turn themselves one after another, each corner lifting as though stirred by breath alone, the parchment moving with a sound like distant wings, or perhaps like thin ice cracking when spring winds soften the frozen streams. Outside, the breeze stirs the long grasses near the walls, their shadows flickering across the stone where sunlight falls, the whole earth seeming to breathe in time with the words, as though language itself has become another season moving through the day. The voices carry stories older than memory, each syllable worn smooth by centuries of mouths no longer living, the consonants like river stones polished by endless currents, the vowels stretching softly like fading echoes across valleys where no one walks now. You feel the warmth of sunlight reaching deeper into the room, the stone beneath your feet changing slowly from cool to mild, the air losing its edge of night, as though the building itself exhales after holding darkness through long silent hours. The words begin to rise higher then, though never harshly, only the way wind rises before rain, with depth rather than speed, with weight rather than force, carrying some passage older than the walls, older than the first fire built here. Candles flicker once when the breeze outside grows stronger, their flames bowing without breaking, thin smoke curling briefly before straightening, the scent of heated wax deepening in the momentary draft, the shadows climbing the walls like waves, sliding upward before retreating again. You listen as the tone softens once more, the reading turning gentle, like water sliding back into its narrow channel after spilling briefly across low banks. The story within the words, folding itself carefully rather than vanishing, leaving nothing sharp behind. One final page turns, though the passage feels unhurried, the closing phrases shaped like hands smoothing linen before leaving a room, each sound lingering a little longer in the rafters, beneath the arches, along the floorboards worn by centuries of feet. Then silence takes the space once more, not sudden, not empty, only deep in the way ponds grow deep when wind stops, in the way night grows deep when snow falls, in the way memory grows deep when voices rest. The pages close without touch, the cover settling into its own weight, the lectern standing quietly as though it too breathes slower now, the wood grain catching sunlight where once only shadow lay, its surface warmer than the air around it. You step back, hearing the soft give of boards beneath you, smelling the faint sweetness of wax still rising from candles, feeling the cool edge of stone walls beside the door where sunlight has not yet reached, the contrast gentle rather than cold. Outside, the wind moves steadily through the grasslands, carrying the smell of earth freshly turned somewhere beyond sight, the sharp green of early leaves, the faint sweetness of wildflowers just beginning to open, where morning warmth reaches their folded, waiting petals. The sky stretches clear above the hills, the kind of blue that seems both endless and weightless. as though nothing could ever gather storm beneath it, as though no sound could rise here except wind through grass and faraway birdsong. You walk slowly back along the path, the air softer now, the trees spreading shadow across the ground like cool water poured from a high place, the leaves above stirring faintly as though in quiet conversation with the steady moving breeze. Each step carries the lingering memory of voices still shaping the air behind you, their tones settling somewhere beneath thought, somewhere nearer the heart. The way music sometimes stays long after its notes can no longer be heard at all. By the time you reach your door again, the sun stands higher above the fields, the air warmer across the stones, the sky bright enough that shadows sharpen slightly at their edges, though even here nothing moves with any haste or noise. You rest beside the open window, listening to wind moving through hedges, through grass, through the small hollow spaces between roots and earth, as though all the land itself knows the language carried each day from the chapel's shadowed heart. When you close your eyes, the memory of voices drifts upward again, neither loud nor clear, only warm and low, like the final glow of coals beneath ash, like the aftertaste of honey, like the light that lingers long after sunset. You wake with the faint smell of rain lingering in the air, cool and sweet, carrying the memory of clouds brushing the hills the night before. The light through the window soft, as if it has paused before entering the room. The floor is cool beneath your bare feet, the wood grain carrying the faint warmth of yesterday's sun, each step sounding softer than the last, as though the room itself bends quietly to the rhythm of your movement, holding you gently in its hush. Outside, the hedges sway lightly in a subtle breeze, the dew glistening like scattered glass across every leaf and blade of grass, each drop trembling slightly before settling, as if reluctant to let the world go after a night of rain. You follow the familiar path to the chapel, the stones beneath your shoes, smooth but damp, the air carrying both the scent of wet earth and the faint sweetness of fallen leaves beginning their slow turn toward autumn, soft and muted. The trees along the way lean close, their branches brushing faintly against one another, whispering sounds only you can imagine, their bark dark with moisture, the leaves trembling gently in the lightest draft, the world around you alive yet hushed beneath the morning. The chapel door stands open, the wood warmed faintly by the rising sun, its hinges silent as you enter, carrying with you the cool, fragrant air of the morning that blends with the scent of wax, dust, and old stone held within the walls. Inside, the candles burn low, their flames steady yet small, casting light across the worn floorboards and pale stone walls, the room holding warmth in quiet pools beneath each flicker, a subtle rhythm of glow and shadow that moves without rush. The lectern rests at the center, the scriptures lying open upon it, their pages thin, slightly curled at the edges, inked with words that have been carried through countless hands and voices, their weight and age felt more in memory than sight. The first voice rises softly, a gentle presence, each syllable carrying across the room like a feather floating on slow-moving air, a tone shaped by centuries, its sound steady, familiar, and as natural as the breath you draw without thinking. Another joins it, and then another, the tones blending together in quiet harmony, each one shaping the words without haste, filling the chapel with sound that feels like water spreading slowly across a still pond, rippling gently through every corner and crevice. The words linger in the air, bending slightly in the candlelight, folding themselves into the shadows, pressing softly against walls and windows, filling the room as if the building itself were listening and remembering every sound, every syllable, every pause of long ago. You close your eyes and feel the voices rise around you, each one carrying the scriptures with care. The way wind carries scent across a valley, the way light touches a field in slow, even waves, leaving nothing hurried or abrupt behind. The waxed floor beneath your feet carries the faint warmth of candles, the smell of melted wax rising in thin threads to mix with the faint trace of earth and stone, creating a perfume of time held carefully, softly, without notice, except in memory. Outside, sunlight spreads slowly across the hills, golden and pale, brushing the leaves and grasses, casting long, thin shadows that stretch across the wet fields, each one a silent witness to the quiet, patient unfolding of the morning and the reading within. The pages turn themselves gently, each movement so quiet it could be mistaken for the settling of air, each sheet lifting slightly before falling back with care. The words catching the candlelight in brief flashes like stars appearing through thin morning mist. You feel the air around you pulse with the rhythm of the reading, the sound wrapping itself like cloth, soft and encompassing, carrying not only the words but the weight of centuries, the presence of those who have spoken here before you without ever being seen. The voices rise and fall, steady as the slow tide, each syllable measured yet effortless, the kind of rhythm that moves through bones as well as ears, filling the room with an invisible tide of memory and sound that no one outside can follow. The sunlight through the high windows shifts slightly, spilling across the scriptures and floorboards, dust motes drifting slowly in the beams like tiny, aimless travelers, the warmth mingling with candlelight to create a room that breathes quietly alongside the voices. You think of all the times these walls have held sound, all the centuries of voices carrying the same words, none of them visible, all of them present, shaping silence into presence, shaping memory into an enduring quiet that rests like a soft hand across your shoulders. The candles flicker in a faint draft, their light bending and straightening, the wax gathering slowly into shallow pools, the smell deepening in the room, yet nothing disturbs the calm, only the gentle rhythm of flame, shadow, and the careful rise and fall of spoken scripture. You feel the voices touch the edges of your mind, not as command, but as invitation, a gentle coaxing into stillness, a soft reminder that words exist beyond their sound, that memory and presence are sometimes carried only in patient listening and quiet attention. The pages turn again, slowly, almost ceremonially, each one lifted by some unseen current, the words spilling softly into the air and then folding themselves into the shadows, the room absorbing the sound as if it were rain falling upon a stone roof centuries old. Outside, the breeze stirs the long grasses, the hedges, and the trees, the scent of earth and moss rising faintly through the open windows, mingling with candle wax and parchment to create a fragrance that is at once fragile, familiar, and comforting. The reading slows, each phrase drawn long and even, as though the voices themselves are aware of the time passing, aware of the soft warmth of sunlight, aware of the way the room holds both sound and silence in equal measure. You close your eyes once more, feeling the rhythm of the reading fold itself around you, the slow cadence carried into the air like threads of silk, winding gently through space and memory until it feels as though you are suspended in something older than time. The candles burn lower, their flames upright yet delicate, shadows retreating slightly before stretching once more. The air carrying faint scent of wax and old wood. The sound of the voices now soft enough to mingle with the distant call of birds waking beyond the walls. The words reach their gentle conclusion without abruptness, falling like leaves onto a still pond, ripples fading slowly, leaving only the hush of air shaped by centuries of care, a silence that holds memory as tightly as the voices held the scriptures themselves. You linger, standing quietly, hearing nothing but the soft settling of floorboards and air, feeling warmth and light and scent intertwined, sensing the careful presence of all those who have come before. Their absence felt only as a quiet weight that anchors the room. When you step outside at last, the world is calm beneath the gentle morning sun. Dew sparkling on the fields and hedges, each blade and leaf catching the light with a soft brilliance. The air carrying the distant, faint smell of wood smoke from early hearths across the hills. You walk slowly back along the path home, feeling the weightless presence of voices still lingering behind you. Not in sound, but in the quiet. The slow heartbeat of memory that follows the footsteps of those who listen carefully, those who remember. By the time you reach your door, the sun rises higher above the fields, shadows retreating across the stones, the air warming subtly, the world moving gently into the day, carrying the soft echo of voices that no one has seen yet, everyone can feel. Even as you lie down once more, the rhythm remains somewhere deep inside you, the gentle pulse of centuries spoken softly, the memory of pages turning and voices rising, the quiet that continues beyond the room and beyond the reading, shaping dreams like slow water shaping valleys. You awaken to the faint scent of wet earth drifting through an open window, the morning air carrying the soft weight of lingering dew, the light entering pale and stretched, brushing across the floorboards like a hand moving with gentle deliberation. The floor is cool beneath your feet, slightly damp where the night's chill still lingers, the texture of worn wood pressing lightly into your soles, grounding you as you move slowly toward the familiar path that leads beyond the hedges to the chapel. The hedgerows along the way are dark with moisture, the leaves trembling faintly in a breeze that carries both sweetness and the crisp tang of early autumn. The smell of rain and soil lingering in the air as though the night had exhaled softly. The stones underfoot are slick in places, each one holding the memory of countless nights and steps. The subtle texture pressing against your shoes in a quiet rhythm, as though the earth itself has learned the slow pace of those who walk here. The chapel door stands open, the wood warmed by the emerging sun, the hinges silent and patient, as though they have heard this day begin countless times before, each creak and sigh recorded in the stillness of the walls and rafters. Inside, the air is cool and carries the faint, lingering scent of wax and old stone. The candles along the walls, upright and steady, their light moving gently across the pale surfaces, creating shadows that curve softly over beams and arches alike. The lectern waits, the scriptures resting on it as if they, too, breathe. The pages slightly curled at the edges, the ink softened by years of light and touch, each word etched into the memory of the building itself long before you entered. The first voice rises gently, a soft, measured tone that carries without effort, the sound moving across the space as if it knows exactly where to go, shaping the air with care, each syllable brushing against the walls and ceiling like a slow wind through leaves. Another joins, then another, harmonizing without haste. The cadence flowing like water over smooth stones, the sound neither rushed nor fragmented, only gathering itself steadily, filling the chapel with presence that feels older than stone. Older than the sun's first light on the hills. The words linger in the space, bending and curving softly, pressing lightly against stone and shadow, resting in the corners and high arches, as though the air itself wished to hold them a moment longer, savoring their shape before allowing them to drift onward. You close your eyes and let the voices settle around you, the sound wrapping itself like warm fabric, carrying the weight of centuries, the memory of those who have spoken here unseen, their breath folded into every corner, every shadow, every quiet stretch of floor. The pages turn slowly, guided by some unseen hand, each one lifting and falling with a whisper quieter than any wind, the ink catching candlelight in brief glimmers, the words seeming to hold themselves delicately, neither lost nor hurried, simply enduring. Sunlight begins to filter more fully through the windows, long pale strips across stone and dust, illuminating motes that drift like tiny dancers in slow, aimless motion, the warmth mixing gently with the glow of candle flames, creating a room that breathes quietly with you. You feel the rhythm of the reading pulse through the chapel, the cadence, gentle yet unbroken, as if the voices themselves have learned patience. And time inside these walls moves not according to clocks, but according to the slow unfolding of words. The wax on the candles softens and gathers at their bases. Tiny rivulets flowing silently, the smell faint but distinct, rising through the air and mingling with the scent of parchment, stone, and the faint green trace of leaves pressed against the open windows from outside. Outside, the wind stirs faintly, brushing across grasses and hedges, carrying the scent of rain-soaked soil, the distant warmth of sunlight, and the faint sweetness of moss-covered stone, all mingling subtly with the air within the chapel to create a quiet, living fragrance. The reading continues, each phrase rolling softly, each voice rising and falling in careful measure, the words moving like water into still channels, shaping the space around them, filling every gap and corner with meaning, warmth, and a slow, enduring presence. You sense the centuries of unbroken ritual, the countless mornings and evenings this room has held sound and silence together, the invisible weight of hands that never touched, mouths that spoke without being seen, memory woven invisibly into walls, floor, and air. The sunlight through the high windows strengthens slightly, casting long, pale streaks across the room, illuminating the words as they fall, highlighting the slow movement of dust and light. The gentle glow touching the edges of stone, wood, and parchment in fleeting brilliance. The voices soften yet remain steady, shaping the words with a tender care, each syllable lingering as if reluctant to leave. Each consonant etched into the air in delicate relief, each vowel carrying warmth, depth, and the sense of timeless patience. You notice the slow turn of the pages again, each lifted and replaced without sound, like the quiet breathing of something alive, the script itself seeming to pulse slightly beneath the fingers of invisible readers, the room holding every movement in gentle reverence. The candle flames flicker faintly as a slight draft moves through a high window, bending briefly before straightening again, the the scent of heated wax deepening softly, mingling with the air, the stone, the wood, and the faint green scent of early leaves pressed near the open doorway. You close your eyes and allow the sound to settle deep within you, the rhythm of voices carrying more than words, filling empty spaces inside your mind and chest, leaving a soft warmth, a gentle echo that feels like memory itself, patient and enduring. The pages turn for a final time, the words spoken with care, the last syllables lingering in air, in dust, in shadows, in your memory. The silence afterward, neither abrupt nor empty, but complete, as though the room exhales slowly after holding centuries of quiet speech. The lectern waits, the scriptures closed again, the wood grain warm in patches where sunlight strikes, the stone floor beneath your feet holding the faint warmth of day, the air thick with a gentle, patient quiet that seems to extend beyond walls and windows. When you step outside, the world greets you with cool air and soft sunlight, the fields silvered with dew, leaves glinting faintly, the distant hills glowing in early light, the faint scent of moss, wet soil, and wood drifting softly across the path toward your home. You walk slowly back, feeling the lingering presence of voices shaped long ago, voices that shaped the space, shaped the memory, shaped you. Their absence, not empty, but full, a quiet companion traveling along the path beside you, intangible, yet unmistakably there. The sun rises higher as you reach your door, shadows retreating from stones, trees, and hedges, the air warming subtly, carrying all the faint scents of morning rain, wet earth, and fallen leaves, the world moving gently into day, while memory and presence continue quietly within. Even as you lie down once more, the echo of the voices remains, faint yet tangible, like the glow of coals beneath ash, like the lingering fragrance of flowers pressed into a book, shaping dreams slowly, quietly, like water folding softly into its own deep channel. You awaken to the faint scent of wood smoke drifting through the morning air, subtle yet persistent, mingling with the cool sweetness of dew, the sunlight entering in thin, pale streams, brushing across the floorboards like a slow and deliberate caress. The floor beneath your feet is cool, but no longer damp, holding the faint warmth of early light, the boards giving softly under each step, guiding your movement as if the room itself knows the gentle rhythm of your careful progress. Outside, the hedges sway slightly in a breeze, carrying the distant smell of wet earth, green moss, and flowers still wet from last night's rain, their colors muted beneath the soft glow of morning, the world around you hushed but alive. You follow the familiar path to the chapel, the stones smooth and slightly darkened from moisture, each one pressing lightly beneath your shoes, the air around you thick with the smell of grass and earth, a soft chorus of life untouched by hurry. The trees along the way stretch upward, their branches brushing faintly against each other, the leaves trembling with a quiet music, the bark darkened by dew, each trunk and limb holding the memory of countless mornings, countless footsteps, countless sunrises past this same path. The chapel door waits open, inviting, its wood warmed faintly by the sun, the hinges silent, the room beyond holding the cool, dense air of stone and candle, carrying faint whispers of wax and parchment, as if centuries of presence linger here without interruption. Inside, the candles burn steadily, their flames small but bright, casting pale light across the floorboards, the walls, the worn stone, shaping shadows that curve gently across arches and beams. A subtle interplay of warmth, light, and the soft weight of centuries. The lectern stands in its familiar place, the scriptures resting open, pages thin, curling slightly at the edges, ink faded, but still holding form, each word carrying centuries of reading, breath, and memory, shaped by voices no longer seen but felt throughout this space. The first voice rises, soft and deliberate, each word carrying through the room as though it has learned patience over centuries, the sound moving across walls and floor with a quiet purpose, touching every corner and surface before fading gently into the next syllable. Another joins, and another, their tones blending into a quiet harmony. Each voice shaping the words slowly and steadily, moving like water over smooth stones, filling the chapel with sound that feels older than the sun, older than the air moving softly through the windows. The words linger in the room, bending softly around corners, pressing lightly against the stone, shaping shadows and light, settling in the high arches and along the floor, as though the space itself has learned to cradle sound and memory together, quietly, without haste. You close your eyes, allowing the voices to wrap themselves around you, carrying the weight of centuries, the echo of those who spoke here long ago, shaping your awareness with their presence, each note a soft vibration against the walls, your skin, and the still air. The pages turn themselves, slowly and silently, lifted by a current no hand can be seen to make, falling gently with a whisper of movement. The ink, catching the candlelight in brief gleams, the words seeming to hold themselves delicately, neither vanishing nor hurried. Sunlight filters fully through the high windows, casting long, pale strips across the floor, dust motes drifting lazily through the beams, warmth mingling with candlelight to create a space that breathes gently, the air carrying both illumination and shadow in perfect, slow balance. You sense the rhythm of the reading pulse through the chapel, steady yet soft, as though the voices themselves measure time differently than the world outside, each syllable moving deliberately, shaping the space, filling empty air with quiet weight and enduring memory. The wax of the candles gathers slowly in shallow pools, the smell of melted wax rising faintly, mingling with the scent of old wood, stone, and parchment, the room holding each element gently, forming a delicate, living tapestry of sound, smell, and light. Outside, the breeze moves through hedges and grasses, carrying faint traces of rain-soaked soil and moss, the scent of early blooms mingling softly with the chapel air, blending seamlessly, as though the world beyond the walls is quietly attentive to the reading within. The voices rise and fall, each phrase drawn carefully, each word lingering as if reluctant to leave, filling every corner, every high arch, every shadow with a patient, slow cadence, a rhythm that moves through both air and memory, shaping presence without effort. You feel the centuries of readings, the countless mornings and evenings, the invisible hands that never touched, the mouths that spoke unseen, the memory woven invisibly into walls, floor, and air, the weight of all that presence pressing softly around you, patient and calm. The sunlight shifts slightly, stretching across the walls and floorboards, illuminating the words, highlighting the movement of dust, the faint glow of candle flames, the slow pulse of light that rises and falls with the reading, touching stone, wood, and parchment in fleeting brilliance. The voices soften yet remain steady, careful, deliberate, carrying warmth, meaning, and memory, with each syllable, the reading shaping the air as much as the air shapes the reading, forming a harmony of presence, time, and sound that exists only here, only now. The pages turn for the final time, lifted and replaced with the care of centuries. The words lingering briefly in the air, then folding into silence, leaving only a hush shaped by patience, a quiet that holds memory as deeply as the voices once held the scriptures. The lectern rests, the scriptures closed, the room holding the warmth of candlelight and sun, the scent of wax, wood, and earth mingling gently. The stone beneath your feet, cool yet comforting, the air filled with the soft weight of absence felt as presence. You step outside slowly, carrying the quiet with you. The fields glistening with dew, hedges glinting faintly, the distant hills glowing softly in pale morning light, the air scented with moss, wet soil, and early flowers. The world moving gently into the day without haste. The path back is soft beneath your feet, the air carrying the faint, weightless presence of voices that shaped the room, shaped memory, shaped you. Their absence, tangible yet comforting, traveling quietly beside you like a patient companion with no form, only warmth. The sun rises higher, the shadows retreating across stones, trees, and hedges, the air warming subtly, carrying all the scents of morning and rain, while memory and presence continue quietly, shaping the day softly, gently, like water folding into its own secret channel. Even as you lie down again, the echo of voices lingers, soft and intangible, like coals beneath ash, like the lingering perfume of pressed flowers, shaping dreams in quiet currents, slow, gentle, persistent, like water shaping valleys over time without notice, without haste. You awaken to the soft gold of morning stretching across the room, the air carrying a faint sweetness of dried flowers pressed long ago, mingling gently with the cool scent of stone and wood warmed by the first light. The floor beneath your feet is smooth and cool, the worn boards pressing softly as you move, the room stretching itself slowly around you, each shadow and beam holding quiet memory of those who have walked here before and left no sound. Outside, the air is filled with the faint scent of dew and moss, the hedges bending slightly in a gentle breeze, the soft tremor of leaves brushing together like whispered secrets, the world around you calm, vast, and patient as ever. You step along the familiar path to the chapel, the stones damp and darkened by morning moisture, pressing softly beneath your shoes, each step measured and deliberate, carrying you forward, as if the path itself remembers the rhythm of your presence. The trees arch above, their leaves glinting faintly in the pale sunlight, branches brushing lightly against each other with a soft rustle, the bark darkened and cool, holding the memory of centuries of mornings, evenings, and quiet footsteps along this winding path. The chapel door waits open, light spilling across its frame, wood warmed gently by the rising sun, hinges silent. The room beyond, holding the subtle coolness of stone, the soft scent of wax and old parchment lingering as though time itself has exhaled here. Inside, the candles burn with small, steady flames, casting pools of gentle illumination across the floor and walls, the shadows curling around arches and beams, moving slowly in response to the faint air currents, the room breathing quietly with their rhythm. The lectern stands, as always, the scriptures resting open, pages curling slightly at the edges, the ink faintly gleaming in the candlelight. each word carrying the weight of countless readings, countless unseen voices shaping their sound into memory, time, and presence. The first voice rises, soft and steady, the words moving across the space with a gentle rhythm, brushing against walls, ceiling, and floor, carrying a calm weight that seems to settle into your bones, wrapping the chapel in the slow pulse of centuries. Another joins, and another, the voices blending without haste, the tones shaping themselves in quiet harmony, filling the room like water spreading evenly across a still pond, each syllable flowing into the next, each note carrying the patient presence of those who came before. The words linger in the air, bending softly around corners, pressing lightly against the stone and shadow, wrapping themselves around the room's curves, as if the space itself knows how to hold sound, memory, and warmth together without effort or rush. You close your eyes and let the voices move through you, the air around vibrating faintly with memory, each syllable a delicate brush against the edges of thought, the cadence forming a gentle pulse that rests quietly beneath your awareness, steady and enduring. The pages turn themselves slowly, each one lifting and falling with the faintest whisper, the ink catching candlelight in brief flashes, the words seeming to float in the air, neither lost nor hurried, simply held in the gentle presence of centuries of care. Sunlight filters through the high windows in long, pale strips, dust motes drifting lazily within the beams, warmth blending with candlelight, creating a room that breathes slowly with you, every inch filled with the quiet, careful rhythm of light, shadow, and patient sound. You feel the rhythm of the reading move through the chapel, steady and unbroken, each syllable carrying weight without force, the voices shaping themselves around air and stone, filling every corner, every shadow, every surface with a gentle, enduring presence. The wax gathers in shallow pools, the smell rising faintly, mingling with wood, stone, and parchment, the room absorbing every element into a quiet perfume of memory, history, and careful presence, delicate and comforting, as though the air itself remembers every syllable ever spoken. Outside, the breeze moves through hedges, grasses, and trees, carrying the scent of wet earth, moss, and flowers, mingling softly with the air within, as though the world beyond the walls has bent itself quietly to the rhythm of reading and memory inside. The voices rise and fall in careful cadence, each word lingering a moment longer than it might, each syllable shaped by centuries of practice, shaping space and silence, carrying meaning and warmth without demanding attention. Only presence, only patient listening. You sense the accumulated history of readings, of countless mornings and evenings, of hands that never touched, mouths that spoke without being seen, the invisible weight of memory folded into walls, floor, and air, pressing softly against your awareness with calm persistence. The sunlight shifts slightly, long, thin beams crossing floor and walls, illuminating the pages, highlighting drifting dust, mingling with candlelight, forming gentle waves across the room, moving slowly, deliberately, as though the light itself participates in the rhythm of reading and memory. The voices soften, but do not vanish, shaping each word with care, each syllable carrying warmth, depth, and patient attention. The reading forming a gentle harmony with space and time, each sound settling into the room as if it has always belonged there and always will. The pages turn for the final time, lifted and lowered silently, the words lingering for a heartbeat in the air before folding into stillness, leaving behind only a hush shaped by centuries of patient attention. A quiet that carries memory as fully as voices once carried sound. The lectern rests, the scriptures closed, the room holding warmth from sun and candle, the faint scent of wax, wood, and earth mingling in delicate layers, the air still and comforting, carrying the quiet weight of absence, felt as presence, patient, steady, and calm. You step outside slowly, the morning stretching pale and gold across fields and hedges, the dew sparkling faintly, distant hills glowing softly, the air scented with moss, wet soil, and flowers, the world moving gently into day, while memory and quiet continue with you. The path back is soft beneath your feet, the air carrying faint echoes of unseen voices, their presence tangible though unseen, traveling quietly beside you like a companion without form, moving with patience, shaping your steps, shaping memory, shaping the stillness of day. Sunlight rises higher, shadows retreating across stones and hedges, the air warming subtly, carrying the sense of morning rain, wet earth and flowers, while memory and presence continue quietly, shaping the world gently, like water folding itself into a deep, hidden channel. Even as you lie down once more, the echo of voices lingers faintly, soft and intangible, like coals beneath ash, like the lingering perfume of pressed flowers, shaping dreams in quiet, slow currents, like water shaping valleys over centuries without haste or notice. You awaken to the quiet warmth of sunlight, stretching lazily across the floorboards, the air soft with the faint scent of wax, old wood, and the lingering memory of pages turned long before your arrival, carrying centuries folded gently into each breath. The chapel feels still, its stone and timber exhaling faintly, as though it remembers every voice, every syllable ever spoken within, each echo settling softly into corners and beams, pressing lightly against the walls with a calm, enduring patience that surrounds you. The candles along the walls flicker softly in gentle draughts, the faint smell of melting wax blending with the subtle perfume of aged parchment, the warmth of sunlight filtering through high windows painting pale, long stripes that curve slowly over stone and dust. You step across the floor, your feet brushing cool wood, the texture familiar and grounding, each movement measured as if the room itself guides your pace, each creak of the boards carrying the weightless memory of countless footsteps that came quietly before yours. Outside, the breeze moves through hedges and trees, soft and measured, carrying the faint sweetness of flowers, moss, and earth, the scent of early morning dew mingling with the warmth of sun on stone. And the air feels alive, yet hushed, attentive, and patient. The lectern waits, as it always has, the scriptures resting open, pages curling faintly at the edges, ink soft and warm with light, each word carrying the memory of voices that shaped it gently, shaping the room, shaping you, shaping time in quiet resonance. The first voice rises, soft and deliberate, the sound moving across the room as if guided by memory itself, brushing against every surface with careful attention, filling air, stone, and shadow with warmth, forming a gentle current that pulses quietly through your chest. Another voice joins, and another, the tones blending effortlessly, the words flowing together like water over smooth stones, carrying presence and patience, weaving through the high arches, the dust-laden beams, and the floor beneath your feet, creating a calm music that belongs entirely to this place. The syllables linger, curving gently around corners, settling softly in shadows, pressing lightly against stone and wood, each word carrying a faint weight that presses against memory and imagination, shaping quiet reflection and stillness as though time itself has learned to breathe in harmony. You close your eyes, letting the sound envelop you fully, the rhythm of reading forming a slow pulse beneath awareness, each note a delicate brush against the edges of thought, shaping calm and warmth, a quiet echo that moves through air, bone, and memory alike. The pages turn slowly, each lifted and replaced with barely a whisper, the ink catching fleeting glimmers of candlelight, the words seeming to hover between presence and absence, neither disappearing nor remaining fully held in a space shaped by centuries of careful attention and quiet reverence. Sunlight stretches fully through the windows, illuminating dust motes, drifting lazily in beams, mingling warmth and light with the glow of candle flames, the room alive with a gentle pulse of sight, scent, and sound, every surface soft with memory and slow, deliberate presence. The rhythm of the reading flows steadily, softly, shaping the air and your mind with patient consistency, each voice moving deliberately, each phrase a gentle wave carrying warmth, meaning, and the subtle weight of unseen hands that guide without being seen, shaping the space quietly. The wax pools slowly in shallow rivulets, the faint scent rising to mingle with the air, soft and warm, the smell of wood, stone, and parchment carrying quietly through the room, forming an invisible tapestry of history and presence that presses gently against your awareness. Outside, the wind moves gently, brushing grasses and leaves, carrying the subtle scent of earth, moss, and flowers, blending with the chapel's air, as if the world itself bends in reverent attention to the voices within, following the rhythm of reading and memory that shapes all around. The voices rise and fall, a gentle, unhurried cadence, each syllable carrying meaning, warmth, and calm, lingering just long enough to shape presence without demanding attention, forming a harmony that exists entirely within the room and within you, patient, enduring, and quietly luminous. You feel the centuries of readings, the invisible weight of hands that never touched, mouths that spoke without being seen, the quiet memory woven into walls, floor, and air, pressing softly around you, patient, steady, and calm, a companion that has always been there. Sunlight shifts slowly, highlighting the scriptures, the dust, the candles, forming gentle waves of illumination across floorboards and beams. The room pulsing subtly with presence and warmth, every surface and corner touched by soft light, a gentle movement that carries the weight of quiet memory. The voices soften yet remain deliberate, each word shaped by centuries of care, each syllable carrying warmth and depth, the reading forming a slow, delicate music that fills every corner, every shadow, every surface, leaving nothing empty, nothing hurried, only patient presence. The final pages turn with care, each lifted and replaced silently, the words lingering briefly before folding into quiet, leaving a hush that carries memory as fully as the voices carried sound, a gentle weight that presses lightly against the chest and mind alike. The lectern rests, the scriptures closed, the room holding warmth from sun and candle, the air fragrant with wax, wood, and faint earth, the quiet pressing softly into stone and floorboards, carrying the presence of absence, patient, steady, and enduring. as if the walls themselves exhale softly. You step outside, sunlight stretching across fields, hedges, and distant hills, the air scented with dew, moss, and early flowers, carrying the soft memory of unseen voices, their presence tangible though unseen, moving quietly beside you like a gentle, patient companion along the path. The world feels alive, yet hushed, the path soft beneath your feet, each step carrying the memory of voices that shaped the space, shaped the room, shaped you, their absence full, warm, and comforting, traveling quietly beside you, a weightless presence folded into light and air. Sunlight rises higher, shadows retreating across stones, hedges, and trees, air warming subtly, carrying all scents of morning dew, wet earth and blossoms, memory and quiet moving gently with you, shaping the day as slowly, gently, and carefully as the voices shaped the room. Even as you lie down once more, the echo of voices remains soft and intangible, like coals beneath ash, like the lingering fragrance of pressed flowers, shaping dreams in slow currents, gentle, patient, enduring, like water folding itself quietly into the deep channels of time. You close your eyes and feel the warmth of memory, the quiet weight of presence that has traveled with you through rooms, stones, pages, and air, the centuries of voices folding gently into your dreams, guiding them softly into sleep, patient, enduring, and luminous as light. The chapel, the voices, the air, and the sunlight all remain, suspended in memory and perception, pressing softly against your chest, shaping the final moments before rest, a gentle, enduring lullaby that carries the weight of centuries into the stillness of your mind. The world beyond the window continues, soft and bright, but the presence of unseen voices remains, folding gently into the silence, pressing lightly against your awareness, leaving behind a calm, enduring glow, a patient memory, a quiet companion that moves with you into sleep and dream.